Hey, and welcome. We all have that one friend, right? The one who is completely, totally indifferent to their own birthday. While some of us are planning parties for weeks, they just greet the big day with a shrug. Well, today, we're going to dive deep into the hidden psychology behind that shrug, and trust me, what we find is way more revealing than you'd ever guess.
And you know what? For a lot of people, this is their reality. Their birthday is just another day on the calendar. So in this explainer, we're going to unpack that central mystery. Is this just a simple personality quirk, or is there something much, much deeper going on here?
So is it really just another Wednesday? Or could this indifference actually be a pretty sophisticated psychological strategy? We're about to explore whether it's all rooted in a need for control, powerful defense mechanisms, and maybe even some of our most profound fears.
Okay, so let's peel back that first layer, the battle for control. You have to imagine, for some people, that birthday spotlight, it doesn't feel warm and celebratory. It feels like a cage. It's this intense, totally unwanted pressure of being the center of attention when you never asked to be. There's actually a name for this. Psychologists call it the observer effect. It's that very real distress you feel from being watched, judged, and assessed on a day that's supposed to be all about joy. And the root of the problem often isn't the party itself, but a deep, profound loss of your own autonomy.
And this right here is the core conflict. Think about it. Normally, you're the author of your own life story. But on your birthday, you can suddenly feel like you've been demoted to a character in a play that someone else is directing. And for people with a strong internal locus of control, that is, a powerful belief that they steer their own destiny, this forced passivity can be absolutely maddening. So what do? They just reject the entire performance.
Okay, so control is a massive piece of the puzzle. For sure. But what if the fear isn't really about all that unwanted attention? What if it's about avoiding the crushing weight of disappointment? And that brings us to our next big idea, shielding against disappointment. In this case, indifference becomes this incredibly powerful defense mechanism, a conscious strategy to build yourself an emotion-proof day. Now, this defense is often learned through a pretty painful cycle. It all starts with hopeful expectation, right? Maybe from when you were a kid. But then comes an underwhelming reality. A detail gets forgotten, a friend cancels, and that creates real emotional pain. So to stop that from ever happening again, the brain builds armor, and that armor is indifference.
See, by expecting nothing, you literally engineer a situation where being disappointed is impossible. This isn't about being humble. It's a clever and often subconscious preemptive strike against getting hurt. A defense learned from past experiences where high hopes just led to pain.
But believe it or not, we can go deeper still. Let's peel back one more layer to find some of the most subconscious reasons for birthday indifference. These are the deeper fears and the hidden ideals. And this is where we start to touch on things like mortality and the strange paradox of the perfectionist.
I want you to really think about this for a second. A birthday is a celebration, but of what exactly?
Because when you strip it all away, a birthday is a marker. It's a marker of being 1 year closer to the end. I know, it's a stark thought, but psychologically, it is an incredibly powerful trigger that, let's be honest, many of us would rather not pull. And there's a whole psychological framework for this. It's called terror management theory, and it suggests that all of us have this deep-seated anxiety about our own mortality. Milestones like birthdays, well, they make that anxiety impossible to ignore. So for some, ignoring the day is just a subconscious tactic to quiet that screaming internal alarm.
And this brings us to a fascinating contradiction, what I like to call the idealist's paradox. It turns out some of the most indifferent people are secretly harboring a vision of a flawless, perfect celebration. But they're so afraid that reality could never match their pristine fantasy, they'd rather just cancel the whole event. It's their way of protecting that perfect dream by never letting it touch the imperfect ground of reality.
Okay, we've explored control, disappointment, and existential fear. But now, we're going to turn this entire concept completely on its head. What if birthday indifference isn't a sign of a problem at all? What if it's actually a sign of incredible strength? Let's talk about the strength of silence. And here is the big, powerful reframe. Authentic self-worth needs no annual validation. What if genuine, unbothered indifference is actually a sign of profound psychological health and a deep sense of security? And when you look at it this way, you see the two sides of the coin.
On the one hand, quiet contentment can signal a genuine, stable self-worth, where feeling valued is just your default state. But on the other hand, a frantic, desperate need for a huge celebration, well, sometimes that can point to a void that's felt the other 364 days of the year, where feeling valued isn't a constant, but an annual event.
So, where does all this leave us? Let's bring it all together in our final section, what we'll call the birthday tapestry. We're going to weave all these complex and fascinating threads of indifference into one single picture.
Because at the end of the day, there is no single, simple answer. Someone's indifference could stem from a need for control or a fear of disappointment, maybe that mortality anxiety we talked about, or even the idealist's shield. Or it could be a sign of true inner security. It really is a rich tapestry of human motivation.
And the main takeaway here is this. The goal is not to diagnose anyone, but simply to understand them. So the next time someone you know shrugs off their birthday, maybe you can see it not as a flaw or an insult, but as their own complex way of navigating very human needs for safety, for meaning, and for control.
Which leaves us with one final, provocative thought. After exploring all these hidden layers of the human mind, what does your birthday and how you choose to acknowledge it, what does it really say about you?